Rare Gem Productions proudly presents Entrepreneurially Thinking. Entrepreneurially Thinking is a presentation of BioSTL and CET, the Center for Emerging Technologies, changing the way you view new ventures and activating your entrepreneurial mindset, empowering you to create new pathways for business success in the St. Louis marketplace and beyond. Here's your hosts, Cheryl and Christy. Now let's get thinking entrepreneurially.
Welcome back to the Entrepreneurially Thinking Podcast. I'm Christy Maxfield.
And I'm Dr. Cheryl Watkins-Moore. I lead our STEM Entrepreneurial Inclusion Initiative here for BioSTL and our region. Hey, lady.
How are you?
I am okay.
I feel like I need a new title like I hang out with Cheryl.
You're the superwoman. She's a superwoman, okay?
But like when you got done saying all of it and I want to be like, and mouthful. Then I'm like, +1. +1. That's all good.
Oh my God.
So we've been recording pretty much like 10 weeks in advance this year. So by the time they listen to this will have been a while. But the fact that you were just down in New Orleans.
Nola.
And that was kind of close in great proximity to the Essence Festival and all the greatness that was going on there. But you were talking to the
Black Tech New Orleans. Yeah. It was sponsored by this organization called Novolate. And the woman who sponsored, she's like a one-person show. She put this conference on. Sabrina Short. I give my kudos and my hat off to her. I could only stay one day, but the first day opening was just unbelievable. The speakers were great. She had a great panel discussion, and it was talking about how to get entrepreneurs in New Orleans focused on the tech industry. So it was really, really great.
So folks could Google that and find out if she's doing something next year. But I also mentioned that to say that we're always telling you that you need to keep tabs on what's going on.
Yeah.
And the best ways to do that is to check out our sponsors' websites. So we always have to acknowledge and thank and express our gratitude to CET and BioSTL, without whom we couldn't do the show.
Yes.
But this is also just a reminder that you can keep tabs on Cheryl and me and all the great things going on that have nothing to do with either of us, actually, by making sure that you check out our website, check out their website, and share the podcast with those you love. Because one of those things that we want to make sure you don't forget about is that BioSTL is hosting Vision 2019 on
in
October
collaboration
18.
with a lot of other entrepreneur resource organizations.
Lots of folks
here.
have come together, and we've been meeting for months and putting together all the pieces. So go to visionstlewis.com. Make sure you stay on top of that as well. Follow Ethink Podcast. Stay listening. Find us on iTunes, Spreaker. I downloaded Spotify the other day. You can get us on Spotify.
Wow.
Pretty much whatever you're listening on, you can get us.
You can get us.
Stream us wherever you may be. What else is going on in your world?
Well, we always talk about a little bit of background, right?
Right.
Louis L'Amour once said that there will come a time where you believe everything is finished. That will be the beginning. That's my life. I mean, he made this quote, really? Okay.
Yeah, well, somebody had to say it.
I think that's your life too, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Our guest today has chalked a few of life's events up to this very quote. Rachel''d'souzasiebert is the founder and principal of Gladiator Consulting. I love that. Gladiator. Woo. A firm that partners with nonprofit organizations to embrace an abundance mindset. Love that. Because a lot of people come from this deficit mindset,
especially
which is crazy.
In our nonprofit sector.
Yes. So compelled to find clarity around how their client's mission fits into the larger nonprofit ecosystem. So if you're a do-gooder, a disruptor, a social change maker, then you want to stay listening.
BioSTL is a proud founding sponsor of the Entrepreneurially Thinking Podcast. We want you to know about all the great things they are up to, including the BioSTL STEM, Entrepreneur Inclusion Initiative, and Fundamentals Program for early stage would-be entrepreneurs in the life sciences in St. Louis. You can learn more about all of BioSTL's programs by visiting biostl.org. And for your renewed and continuing support, BioSTL, we say thank you.
My name is racheld'souzasiebert, and I'm the founder and principal of Gladiator Consulting. Entrepreneurially thinking to me means reimagining what's possible at the present time and realigning resources to make it happen.
Joining us today is Racheld'souzasiebert, founder and principal of Gladiator Consulting. She is at her best when she is starting, fixing, and leading. Now also, reimagining, rebuilding, and risk-taking.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah. So, Rachel, we're just really glad you had time to talk with us today.
I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for joining us. So, full disclosure, Rachel and I know each other in many different settings. We work together and Forward through Ferguson. We've done coaching work together.
She's had to watch my child.
It's all good. No, it's all good. It's all
That's great. And I see or hear that you were in Chicago for a while getting your undergraduate.
Yeah, so I did my undergrad at Loyola University.
Yeah.
Loved it. Awesome city. Thought I was going to go to law school, and my dad got sick my senior year of college. So I came back to St. Louis, took a year off, and then realized that I could stay here, be close to family, and get a master's. So I wound up getting my master's of public policy administration at UMSL. And here we are.
Wow. Off to the races, right?
11 years later, I'm still in St. Louis.
I'm loving it.
I was going to say, that sounds like a prize.
But
as she smiles.
And you've been doing a lot in St. Louis in those 11 years.
Sure. Yeah. So when I finished my master's, I thought I was going to get into local government management. I started to interview for those roles, and it didn't feel right at the time.
And you didn't want to go to law school, right?
And I didn't want to go to law school. I want to go to law school now, but my husband has some other things to say about saving for paying off my master's, saving for college for the kids. And yes, my wife wants to go to law school. So I might have to put that off for a little bit. But so I wound up staying in St. Louis and pursued the nonprofit route. So I started
What made you do that? Why nonprofit?
I have always had a social justice bend to the things that I want to do. It started with my parents. It continued through high school and college. And I really wanted to figure out how to use my skills and talents to benefit the community. Growing up in St. Louis as the daughter of Indian immigrants, not being Black and not being white, you see a lot of things and you're not always invited to the table. And so I think the other part of me really wanted to find a space where I could have a voice and be able to give back.
That's impressive. Wow.
So what was your first nonprofit gig?
Yeah.
So my first nonprofit gig was working as the Habitat for Humanity St. Louis Restore Manager. So I'd actually left for-profit retail. I was a general manager for Banana Republic. So managing a luxury lifestyle brand.
And then going to
Habitat for Humanity, managing a store that takes donated building materials and selling them so that people could recycle and reuse materials in their own construction projects.
I didn't know they had a store that you could offer product through that.
It's amazing. I redid the bathroom in our old house for $30. So you need to check it out.
Oh, absolutely. $30. I'm like, $30 is not even a faucet.
No.
It is at Restore.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's great. So that was your first foray then?
That was the first foray. I loved it. I loved the relationship aspects of it. I loved being able to take good things and finding different uses for them, which I think actually speaks to how I sort of have wound up here. But I had the opportunity when I was with Habitat to shift from that sort of nonprofit retail space to get into development. So I made that leap and really enjoyed the opportunity to figure out how to connect donors with mission and obtain resources for organizations who are trying to change the way that we think about people living in the community and how we can access safe and affordable housing.
Well, that's relationship driven, right? So your retail experience was a lot of relationships. So I was going to ask you, how did that transition happen? But if you're interested in building those types of networks and relationships, it seems like foundation work flows right into that.
And it's similar. Like that's where I would say there are very few people I think I share a similar career DNA with, and Rachel and I sort of that being in development and then seeing where else that leads you and what being able to build relationships allows you to do and where it allows you to do it. I think we've got a little bit of that kindred spirit thing going on in that way.
For sure. That's why you're stuck with me forever.
Yay! But you've also transitioned from not just working for one organization doing that. So Gladiator Consulting. What is Gladiator? How did you come to do that? What does that mean for you?
So I think for years with a bunch of friends who I, did my master's with, who I ran into across the nonprofit sector, we always were talking about these ideas that we had and the things that we wanted to do that didn't quite fit into our day jobs. So it was always just sort of a dream that floated out there, just, a little bit beyond our reach. Back in 2015, I had my second child, a daughter, and within a month of her birth, my husband's company was acquired, and he took on a new job that had internationally facing responsibilities. And a week later, the founder of the organization I'd worked with was relieved of her duties at the organization. And so I had a baby, and my husband started a new job, and my boss was gone. And
so you had transition out the wazoo going on.
The life that I knew, the life that I was comfortable with was gone.
So and with a new baby, a new person.
Exactly. So it was, I thought, okay, I'll take a few months longer in maternity leave, and then I'll go back and I'll find a new job. Well, about 7 weeks into the summer, I had a 4-year-old and a newborn and a traveling spouse and no sanity. And realized
she had 2 under 5 people.
Realized, that while I really enjoyed that time with my kids, I wanted to be doing something outside of my house.
A little adult
interaction, different, using some other parts of my brain. So I called my brother, who's a CPA, and said, can you come over tonight? I have dinner and wine, and you're going to show me how to set up an LLC.
Okay.
And that's what happened.
Now, what's your brother's expertise? I mean, why did you have to call him? Was he an attorney or something?
Moral support?
So he's CPA. He was moral support. I figured, some things about stuff I don't know about, and we'll make sure
and when mom asked, I can blame you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I'm not, evading any tax code or whatever. I just, figured he would be the person that would be able to help out.
And is that how Gladiator got its legs?
Essentially.
That night with a lot of wine?
That night. A bottle of wine, crying baby, younger brother. And, initially I really, like I said, I wanted to reconnect with some small organizations. There's a lot of folks around the community who want to do good work, and they don't necessarily have the resources or the network to hire the right people. So I wanted to, be able to write some grants here and there and help with events here and there. And I really, when I got started, wanted to do this work in a way that I was still, able to bring my daughter with me or be able to drop the kids off at school and pick them up, but also work.
So it sounds like entrepreneurship was a way to regain sanity.
Yes, definitely. And
which isn't what everyone thinks of when they think of entrepreneurship, right?
No.
But for you, and this was a period of great turmoil and uncertainty and, as you said, not much sanity.
Yeah, there was a lot of change. And I think what's true, at least for me, is that when a woman has a child or children, people, decide they want to give you the space to be a mother, and they're really excited about your child. And then when you see them, they're asking you lots of questions, which is exciting, but you don't stop being a person when you become a parent or a mother. And that was a personal struggle for me to try to figure out, how do I be the parent that I want to be, or be the spouse that I want to be, but also use my skills and talents and continue to build relationships and continue to improve the community. And those things don't stop because you become a parent.
No, actually, I echo your sentiments, because my son is 17 now, but when he was born, I went through the same thing. My family took bets on how long I was going to stay off, because I was like, I'm going to stay at home until he goes to school about 2.5. I think I went to the first Mommy and Me class, and I was like, I cannot do this. Okay. And started a consulting firm similar to what you're doing, and brought in a nanny during the day that I could still have that contact with him, but could work and then could travel.
So give you guys flexibility, it sounds like.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like some control over your own professional destiny, and also the flexibility to be a mom. And
but I think a lot of women want that. They want to be, I see women struggling all the time, especially if they have corporate jobs and they have to go back in 4 weeks or 6 weeks, which is insane anyway, and then struggle with, I have to put my kid in daycare. But it seems like you made it work for you.
And what I will say is that I think I had a lot of internalized issues around it, because when I would bring my daughter to meetings, nobody cared but me. My clients, she would sit in my client's lap and I'd be yelling about how they didn't meet a deadline, or we'd be going through a spreadsheet together and they'd be shoving dried snap peas into her mouth. And it was fine and it was normal. And it was really interesting because I didn't have to prove that my brain still worked when I had a child to anybody but myself. Right? Everybody else already knew what I was good at. They wouldn't have hired me if they didn't believe that I was good at it. But for me, it was breaking down that own internalized stuff that I had around what it means to be a mom and be a good mom and also have a thriving career.
Now you're almost 5 years into Gladiator.
Wow.
Yeah. It's wild.
So you have a 5 and a 9-year-old, right?
Four and eight.
4 and 8.
So we are celebrating our 4th birthday, going into our 5th year.
She's like, don't rush it.
I know. Oh my gosh, no. This journey has been unimaginable. And I think part of that is because I didn't have a ton of expectations at the beginning. I really wanted to learn for myself. I wanted to learn with my clients. And so there's been this very organic growth to the work. And in the beginning, I'd get a project that would come across my plate and I'd send an email to 20 friends who had full-time jobs and would say, hey, who wants to work on this? And, 3 or 4 people would raise their hand.
Wow.
And so really also being able to provide these sort of non-traditional professional development opportunities and opportunities for paid work to people in my network has also been really rewarding in a way that I didn't plan or I didn't expect.
So you're leveraging your network.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure they're looking at that opportunity as an opportunity, like you said, for professional development, but to get outside of what they're doing in their day to day.
Right.
Which is really cool. So are there any types of nonprofits? What are the types of nonprofits that you work with? Are there specific types like schools or community programs?
I would honestly say that the organizations that are attracted to us are shit disturbers. So it could be a school or a social justice organization, a financial education or employment organization. It's really, we find that our clients are trying to dismantle something that's not working, whether it be in their own corner of the community or at a local level or at a state level. And so they really are looking for someone who has a more holistic approach to the work. And that's something that we learned, right at the beginning, that it's not just about leadership development. It's not just about fund development. It's not just about knowing how to read a financial statement. There are more factors involved in how you do this work well. And we have to have the right people at the table. And those people have to have the right training and the right context for the work. And we have to have our volunteers buy into the work that we're doing. And so it's just much bigger than sort of the 1 or 2 projects people think, when they come to us, oh, Rachel will help us with this.
I love that fact because a lot of nonprofits, they want to do good, but they're not organized. They're not set up. They're not future focused.
But even if they are, I think what I'm hearing you say too is that they're looking at solving bigger root causes than simply perhaps taking care of symptoms that might be manifesting. That it sounds like that when they're disturbing the shit, it's because the shit ain't working.
Right, exactly.
But the point I was making is that there's a lot of folks who want to do good but don't have the structure in place to do it. And it sounds like you're helping them to build that structure so they can be successful in impacting.
Yeah. One of the organizations we're working with right now, they're getting ready to celebrate their 10th anniversary. And they realize while they've done really good work across the region, they haven't actually solved the problem that they set out to deal with because they were so focused on their programs that they weren't looking at the racial dynamics that exist in St. Louis or the inequity that has come from that. They didn't look at the full history of what restrictive housing covenants did to the community. And so as we're looking forward to the next 5 and 10 years, they've asked us to help them put together a strategic plan that actually tries to figure out, like, how do we have real conversations, not only with the people that we serve and the people that we do this work, but with our other financial partners in the community, with our donors, with the other lenders, so that we're not having the same conversation in 10 years. That's Herculean for them. And it's Herculean for any institution to say, in order for us to solve the problem, we have to take a sledgehammer to the system that necessitated us in the first place.
Systems change.
Well, we're going to come back and talk more about transformation.
Purpose First Advisors is proud to support the Entrepreneurially Thinking podcast. Purpose First works with entrepreneurs and the organizations that support them to accelerate business formation, scaling, and transformational growth. For more information about how to work with Purpose First Advisors on business model validation, financial modeling, core messaging, or other growth and profitability strategies, visit purposefirstadvisors.com.
CET, the Center for Emerging Technologies, is a proud founding sponsor of the Entrepreneurially Thinking podcast. We want you to know about all the great resources they provide, including the Square One Ignite and Bootcamp programs, as well as the online startup toolkit. The toolkit has videos, articles, and other materials to help you build your business. For more information about CET's programs, visit CETSTL.com. And for your renewed and continued support, CET, we say thank you.
My name is Shayba Muhammad. I am the designer and owner of Manal, as well as founder of the Makers Program. To me, entrepreneurially thinking means to be a problem solver. Of course, you want to be a person who starts a business, but also, what are you using that business to do? What problems are we solving, and how are we being of service to the community?
So today, almost 5 years in, folks are finding you when they're ready to take a sledgehammer or something.
Pretty much.
And that wasn't necessarily the way your client base grew initially, but I know from personally working with you, you've always been really clear about who you are and the type of impact you want to have in the world, that getting out the grant on time is important and necessary, and certainly not the be-all and end-all of the work that Gladiator hopes to do in the world. How do people find you? So if it's one thing to know I need a grant written, it's another thing to know that I could work with somebody who could help me take a sledgehammer to the system.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I think in the beginning it was, people were like, ooh, she doesn't have a job right now. Maybe she'll come do something for me. Maybe she'll come do something for me. And, in that first year, I said yes to everything. I was like Shonda Rhimes, year of yes to this, yes to that. And when you say yes to all of those things, you figure out pretty quickly what you don't like doing or what you don't want to do or what you're not good at and what someone else could do better. And so I think that there was a benefit in doing that. In year two, I, sort of decided, okay, I'm just going to work with these 3 organizations and I'm going to do.
How did you select those 3? I mean, what made them stand out?
I think at that point they were all organizations that were involved in justice work around dismantling systems oppression, whether it related to race or sexism or differently abled people. And that sort of really spoke to my personal convictions about building equity and belonging in the region. And
so that's your sweet spot then?
Well, hold on. I failed. A little bit. I failed a little bit in year 2. And it was a good failure. I mean, it was really painful. But, one of those relationships with the organization that I have great respect for, it didn't work out. And what I realized at that point is you can believe in somebody's work. And sometimes it's also not a good fit for what you want to do or how you want to do it or the kind of values in life that you have. And so I had to lick my wounds a little bit. And so it really was at the end of 2017 that I gathered together a group of people who, like I said, I'd sort of been pulling in for projects here and there and made them, sit around a conference table the Friday before the Christmas holiday. So I was not anyone's favorite, though we did do happy hour again.
Was that before your audience or after?
They probably wish they would have been, happy during. Right. But really sort of tried to figure out what is the vision for this work and what are the, qualities and the values that we bring to the table. And really have used that to inform, who we think we're going to work with. What winds up being true is that people find us, whether it's word of mouth, through the projects that we've done in the past, or maybe Googling nonprofit work with a racial equity lens, is how they find us. We had an organization that came to us last fall who has undergone, and actually it's Generate Health, great organization, definitely Google them, who has undergone a huge process of saying, in order for us to do the best work we can for moms and babies in the St. Louis region, we have to look at Black moms and babies because the outcomes for them
we have to prioritize them.
3 times worse. And so they updated their strategic plan, and they updated their vision statement, they updated their mission statement. And then they started to fundraise and realized, okay, wait a minute, we can't do this work well if we don't apply the same lens to how we raise money for our organization. So, their executive director contacted me last fall to say, hey, have you ever done this? And I said, no, but let's do it together. And so we were able to spend some months trying to figure out, how do we create a fund development plan for an organization to be able to thrive and to be able to raise money from organizations who have resources to share, but also get really clear about dismantling the power dynamic that exists in philanthropy between people that fund and people who need those funds.
So how does that's a that's a very intriguing statement, but how does that work when you're trying to...
Isn't it fascinating, though?
That is very fascinating, especially in fundraising.
Stuff.
Yeah. So how do you do that?
I mean, honestly,
not
for us
you,
as
but,
well. Yeah, sure. Yeah,
but her, because there aren't many people doing this.
But it's people talking to people. I mean, what you wind up finding out, and being a consultant, it's a sort of weird third party to being able to have more insight to how funders tick and how nonprofits want to achieve their goals. But what winds up being true is that no one's happy with how things are going. Nobody feels like they're getting the outcomes closer. They're getting the outcomes they want, that people are using the logic models they create for grant applications, or that we were able to achieve, 4 or 5 of our strategic goals in our plan. There aren't a lot of organizations saying that. So we know, looking at that narrative, that something's not working.
Right.
And so to be able to sit a funder and an organization down at a table and have a really frank conversation, get rid of the frills, let's talk about what do you actually want to achieve and how does it look on your side? What do you want to achieve and how does it look on your side? And then figure out what the common ground is and put resources behind that starts to transform the way that we want to do the work.
So you're transforming funders and how they fund
the
as
whole
well.
Damn thing, girl. There's a sledgehammer and it knows no boundaries.
Yeah. So it's not just on one side. It's on both sides. And you have to have that funder that's willing to have that conversation.
You have to. And
that's really impactful.
It's not easy. You can pick up a book like Winners Take All or Decolonizing Wealth and, cry yourself to sleep at night because the truth is hard. The truth is unbearable. But, you don't get to read that and then keep doing things the way that we've been doing them because, for me, I've been in St. Louis my whole life and now I'm raising children here. I have to leave this community better than I found it. And doing the same things aren't going to yield me any better results or yield this region any better results.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So you are really pioneering justice philanthropy in St. Louis.
Yes.
And when you said when you started Gladiator, you also didn't know what to expect. So
sure.
Being on the leading edge of justice philanthropy, having these experiences under your belt, hey, I've not done that before either, but let's try it together approach to the work you're doing. Have you set some expectations for moving forward? Now that you know more?
Yeah, I think so. When I started Gladiator, it really was I need to get out of my house and I need to reestablish who I am. And so at that time, especially when my kids were younger, writing grants was easy and planning events was easy and doing some of those, low level revenue generating, like writing a development plan, that stuff was great. That doesn't dismantle systems. It doesn't make organizations better. And even if they are maybe building capacity from an annual perspective, we don't know what that looks like year over year. And so for me now, again, celebrating our 4 years, we have all the resources that we need. in St. Louis. We have all the people.
Most people don't even frame it that way.
We have time. I often use the word reimagine because I think that we've been stuck in a rut as a community, and we need to reimagine what is possible with the different resources that we have.
Is anybody else, you're doing this here in St. Louis. What about on a national scale? Are there other organizations like yourself that are being developed, or this is a whole new frontier at this point?
I think that there are consultancies that probably have been around a little bit longer who are, dipping their toes in the water of systems change, talking a little bit more about racial equity, talking a little bit more about what belonging looks like. But they're way bigger, I think. And I think that they look to serve organizations that are bigger. I really, when I started to do this work 4 years ago and now, want to serve organizations that are small to mid-size. Every once in a while, we'll get a bigger organization. And if it works out, I'm not going to say no to that. But there's a perception that there's just not enough resources for some of those smaller organizations to get by. And if you're trying to hire a full-time person, or you're trying to throw a gala, or you're trying to get national dollars here, that might be true. You might not be able to access it, but that doesn't mean that you can't get your hands on the talent you need to do the good work for the people that you serve and you work with.
I was just wondering, are there other models that you're pulling from a national perspective? Seems like you found your niche, and that you are focusing on these small to mid-sized type of organizations. And I was just curious, are you benchmarking against other organizations that are in doing this type of work?
There's not a lot.
It doesn't exist.
I mean,
sounds
I would hazard to guess that social impact investing is maybe the closest akin to it, but even there hasn't been a lot of systems examination, and there hasn't been a lot of racial or gender equity conversations until very, very recently.
So you are a trailblazer.
I mean, I would say, for the first 10 years of my professional career, I would have considered myself a fundraiser. I don't know that I'm a fundraiser anymore, and I don't know that my fundraising colleagues would consider me a fundraiser anymore, because part of my job is to know and be able to advise a client when to not ask for money anymore.
Or not to take it.
Or not to take the money.
People.
Yeah.
I mean, the books Rachel referenced, The Winners Take All, and the other one was
Decolonizing
Wealth. I've only read one. I've read the Winners Take All. Yeah. It is a true indictment of the philanthropic profession, right, on both sides of the table. And with 20 years of fundraising under my belt, very much took to my bed for a little while and was like, I'm not sure.
What am I doing with
What did I contribute to for 20 years?
Exactly.
What am I contributing to as a donor? What am I contributing to as a board member? How do I get, thanks, Rachel, for really undermining my complete identity and self-worth.
You're welcome.
Thank you. But like she said, you can't unknow it.
Yeah.
Right. And so to me, it's all just fascinating. Well, before we do end our time together, though, one of the themes I'm hearing you talk about is abundance, right? That very few folks actually frame it of we have enough, we have what we need. We simply need to be more creative in how we deploy it, right? And understand, but also question the underlying assumptions that are being made. Have you always come naturally to an abundance mindset?
Probably not. And I will share with you. So, pardon me while I go down the garden path here. But back in 2011, I had my son, who is now 8. And 8 days after he was born, at the age of 28, I suffered a massive heart attack.
Not uncommon, but also
pretty
shocking
scary
and devastating for you and your family.
Yeah, no family history of that. None of my doctors could figure out why. I had a healthy diet. I weighed a healthy amount, wasn't a smoker, none of that stuff. And, I sat in the ICU for 3 days kind of wondering, when do I get to see my baby again? And what does life look like now? And do I get to eat cheese? And all of life's really important.
These are the fundamental questions.
The important things, right?
And let's just be clear, we would ask the food question.
Of course.
That would be the first question.
No lie.
Right.
Yes. You don't want to know what the answer is about cheese. Okay. I'm going to keep it to myself.
Okay, great.
But when I got out of the hospital that summer, I had an extended maternity leave and really had some time to think about how do I want to live now? Because I don't want to be a person that's scared to go to the gym or scared that a glass of wine is going to put me over the edge or scared if I exercise or if I don't exercise. And so I think that I just sort of decided that you have to really try to make the best of a bad situation. There's a article I read like ages ago called The Choice You Have to Make When Things Go Wrong by Martha Beck. I think it was in like Oprah's magazine or something. So Google that. That frames this idea very well, that you are going to have a set of circumstances, some of which are your own making and some of which are not. And you can make a decision how you use those resources. And sometimes it's going to work out and maybe sometimes you'll fail. But all of those things are okay because you tried to do something. I remember when I, started doing this, there were people who said, oh, come work for me. Or there are people who sort of asked in a roundabout way, who gave you permission to do this work? Or how are you being funded?
Who gave you permission?
Oh. Welcome to St. Louis.
Wow.
And what wound up being true at that point is I sort of decided, okay, well, these are all my decisions. If I make it, awesome. If I fail, it's my failure. I can go back and find a job. And what has wound up being true for me is that as long as something has felt good and felt like the right thing to do, I've done it. And if it has felt bad or the wrong thing to do, even if it was scary, I decided not to do it.
It's trusting your gut.
Yeah, which is terrifying, which is a terrifying philosophy, but it has worked so far for me.
Awesome. So I can think of a dozen adjectives and ways to describe you. How do you self-identify?
Yeah.
Okay,
we've stumped her.
Yeah, I know, maybe a little bit. No, I mean, here's what's true. I don't know where I fit in traditional philanthropy and, traditional nonprofits. And I'm okay with not fitting. I'm okay with forging a new path. I'm okay with reinforcing the things that have worked for organizations. But what I ultimately hope is that the problems that we have now are not the problems that my children have in this community in a decade or in a generation. And so I fit in the place that changes those things because I don't want to be a grandma and have my children say to me, what were you doing 30 years ago when all of this other stuff was happening? Like that is a conversation that I don't want to have.
So if someone were to call you a shit disturber or a change maker or a change agent or an entrepreneur, all those would work for you.
All of those things are true.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you for making time to share with us your approach to the work you do, your choices and mindset, and just your ability to create this new space and be successful as a businesswoman and as a change maker.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Changing the way you view new ventures, unlocking your creativity and innovation, igniting your thinking about entrepreneurship. It's Entrepreneurially Thinking. Get connected and discover more. Visit entrepreneuriallythinking.com to listen to all your favorite episodes and learn more about our guests, hosts, and sponsors. Feeling inspired? Be sure to share your thoughts, questions, and stories in the comments section. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. The best way to show love is to share and subscribe. Let everybody know that you're entrepreneurially thinking.